Hey guys, with this hurricane coming in, I hope that you're staying safe, staying dry. It's a good weekend to curl up on the couch, you know what I mean? But maybe, with the rain and everything, can't do as much. It'll give you a good chance to catch up on some videos, catch up on the story, make sure you're coming into chapter 5 like I'm talking about this week. I'm going to do my best to keep this one short. Got a note from someone saying I've been running a little long, so I'll do my best to keep it quick for you guys. Alright, so let's jump right in this week. We're coming off of last week. Moses has just parted the Red Sea and brought the Egyptians out, and they've been wandering. They're wandering, being led by God through the desert, through the wilderness, and their ultimate goal is the Promised Land. But before they can get there, they've got to kind of learn who God is. And they do a really terrible job of that. So the story I want to talk about today is the golden calf. And what's going on here is Moses has been up on the mountain with God for 40 days. And the people are starting to get restless and they're falling into sin. So I'm going to start us out in Exodus 32, verse 1. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So the people are getting restless. They don't know where Moses is. He's been gone for 40 days. What is that, like 6 weeks? Close. But they don't know what's going on, so they tell Aaron, they're like, "Hey, well, make us a god. Make us a god who can lead us since Moses isn't here." And, Aaron's been Moses' second in command, so of course he's going to do the right thing and, stop them. No, he doesn't. Aaron does a terrible job with this situation. He does not handle it well at all. He gets it completely wrong. He makes a plan to create them a god, and then he follows through with it. We see that in Exodus 32, 4 and 5. "And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.' When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, 'Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord.' And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play." Just to give you a frame of reference here, 8 chapters back, in chapter 24, the people of Israel sealed their covenant with God to follow his laws and his commands. Now they're breaking the first 2 right here. "Have no other gods before me. Do not create graven images or idols." It's been 40 days, and they're already breaking the first 2 of the Big 10. What are they doing? I don't even know how to respond to that. What's even worse is what happens when you look at kind of their worship next to the worship that happened when they were worshiping God and sealing this covenant. I'm going to read this from Exodus 24, verses 4 through 7. "And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the people of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he threw against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, 'All that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient.'" That was 8 chapters, 40 days ago. And they've already broken that covenant with God. We see, when we compare these 2 passages, we see Aaron doing things very similar to what Moses did. It says, they both rose early in the morning. They both created altars. They both gave burnt offerings and peace offerings. But the huge difference comes up at the very end. At the end of Moses' passage, he goes up and he reads the words of God to his people. At the end of Aaron's passage, it says they eat and drink and get up to play. Moses reads God's words to his people. Aaron just throws a party for him. They've created this idol that has already taken the place of God in their life. What could be worse than that? There's nothing that this calf is going to do for them. God's been taking care of them, and he's going to keep taking care of them. This calf hasn't done anything, and it never will, because it's nothing compared to God. But we get to see how not to live like that when Moses comes down the mountain. So we open up on Moses coming down the mountain. Exodus 35, verses 15 and 19. Going to skip a little chunk in the middle there. Then Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand. Tablets that were written on both sides, on the front and on the back they were written. And as soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets out of his hand and broke them at the foot of the mountain. What Moses did there was a symbol of what his people were doing. His people had taken the laws of God and shattered them. They were dancing and worshiping around this golden calf, this idol, this false god that they had created. And Moses was mad. And it's a righteous anger that burns for God. I hope that you remember last week the Moses that we met. The Moses at the burning bush who was just making excuse after excuse after excuse of why he wasn't the right guy for God's job. This is a different Moses. It's the same dude, but they're so different. That Moses we saw just about 30 chapters ago and this Moses. This is a Moses stepping down the mountain who's a leader. He's grown into that role, and more importantly, he's grown into his role as a follower of God. So what's the difference? What changed Moses? Moses has spent the last 40 days on a mountaintop, just him and God. He's been talking with God. God's been talking with him. And it's amazing that the change that makes in somebody. Exodus 32, 30 through 32 says, "The next day Moses said to his people, 'You have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin.' So Moses returned to the Lord and said, 'Alas, this people has sinned a great sin. They have made for themselves gods of gold. But now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, please blot me out of your book that you have written.'" This is a leader who loves his people, who understands God and loves him, and knows that what these people did cannot go unpunished. But he's ready to take that on himself. Moses was ready to take the punishment that God had in mind for these Israelites who had created these idols. And he told God, just take me, just put it on me. This is a strong leader who loves his people. This isn't the weak guy we saw groveling at the burning bush last week. Throughout Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy and just the wandering time that they're in this desert, we see Moses spending more and more and more time with God. And through that time, he becomes more like God. It's the same thing we should hope for, right? That we can be made different and that we can be used. Because right now, we're like Moses last week. We feel like we can't. Whatever it is that God's telling us to do, we feel like we can't. But when we spend time with God, in His presence, talking to Him, reading His words, praying to Him, we become more like Him. And when we become more like Him, we can be used for His purposes better. It's the only way for that to happen, is to spend time with God. So my question is, are you doing that? Are you spending time with God? And are you becoming the person that He wants you to be? Because if you're not, you may want to reevaluate. Just carve out any amount of time for Him, and He'll use it, and He'll make you amazing. Nobody forced Moses to go up on this mountain. Nobody forced Moses to go talk with God. Nobody forced Moses into any of this. In the same way, no one can force you to spend time with God. You're off at college. You got a lot going on. No one's going to force you to spend time with God. I can't do it through this video. I'm right here in my office. Your parents can't do it. They're not there with you. Your friends can't. They can't force you to do anything. Only you can make that choice to spend time with God. And so my question is this, and this is what I want you guys to take away and think about this week. Are you spending time with God, becoming the person that He wants you to be, the person that He can use in His plan? Or are you spending time in the world and becoming the person that the world wants you to be? Guys, I want to end on a positive note here. If you decide to take some time and spend with God, it's only going to work out for the better. God's going to use that time. He's going to redeem that time. He's going to make it completely worth your while. And you'll be better for it. And so I'll use that to announce this Jamaica mission trip that we've got coming up. Applications are going to be available starting this Sunday. Email me, text me, whatever. I'll get you an application. We want college students to come on this thing. We're saving spots for you guys. Please take them. I've got all the information you can need, and we would love to have you there. So stay safe in this weather, guys. I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
You were only waiting for this moment to arise.